Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for The Boys Season 2, Episode 4, Nothing Like It in the World. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of The Boys, so I'll have to start with a spoiler warning for The Boys up to Season 2, Episode 4. If you haven't seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, I haven't seen that many reviews or read that many reviews on this episode, so I haven't seen anyone yet refer to this as a filler episode, but I could imagine there could be some out there who may refer to it as a filler episode because it takes on a very different tone than most episodes, particularly the first 3 of the season that we have, where it's not really as concerned with advancing the plot, and I kind of caught on to that quite early on, and so I kind of curbed my expectations of expecting this to really advance and further the plot. I knew that this episode was more concerned with character stories. Now, just to be clear, me myself, I would not call this a filler episode. I actually love this episode. I thought it was amazing, and this is something I think a lot of people get confused with on my reviews. Whenever I call something a filler episode, they just assume that I just hate character episodes and I just want them to constantly advance the plot, which is not the case. I think there is a clear distinction between a filler episode and a character episode, and of course some people may agree or disagree with my opinions and where I draw the line, because sometimes I think there are some examples of some episodes of any various shows that's clearly, like, the best example for me is The Fly from Breaking Bad, but that's a whole argument where that's clearly a filler episode. That is not a character episode. But anyway, I have, so there's various episodes where maybe some people disagree. So, you just don't like character stories, you just want action, you always want them to be doing stuff, which is bullshit. I love character episodes. I think there's a clear distinction, though, between character episodes that really advance the characters, build on the characters, that tell interesting stories around the characters, and stuff that's just there to take up time. Like The Walking Dead. Like 90% of, especially after season 3, 90% of The Walking Dead is a filler episode. And showed the creator of the guy who wrote the comic, I don't remember his name at the top of my head, he once said in an interview he thought there was no such thing as a filler episode in The Walking Dead. I'm like, dude, 90% of your shit is filler. It's just there to take up space. They're not character buildings. Plus, all these characters are going to die in a couple episodes anyway, so who cares? But anyway, now I'm getting off on a side rant about The Walking Dead. So, point is, I love this episode. I think it was brilliantly constructed, and the fact that it did very little to advance the plot doesn't bother me at all, because especially in the context of The Boys, and this is something I was complaining about in season 1, that the boys themselves were very underdeveloped. And that's something I've heard actually other reviewers bring up, that they felt like they didn't really get that clear of a handle on who the boys were, maybe outside of Huey and Billy Butcher. But even them, I would argue, could still be developed a bit more. And that's something that I think is a common complaint. And I think this episode goes a long way to develop the boys, and particularly Mother's Milk. I got a lot more of a handle on his character. He seems a lot more three-dimensional to me now, and also even Frenchie. And the past couple episodes, you could say, sort of helped develop the character of Kimiko. But she didn't get that much more development per se, but she felt like a more dynamic and real character in this episode than she had in season 1. So, and not just that, of course, we get a lot of character development across the board. Now, the thing about this episode I love is that it has the theme of romance and relationship, and I think it plays on that theme extremely well, because we got 3 different storylines going, or 4, depending on how you look at it. all centering on relationships, and each one pretty much takes the same path, and it's very interesting that way. So we have Hugh and Starlight. What's that, his name? Annie, I believe. Anyway, we have Hugh and Annie going on a road trip. We have Billy Butcher reuniting with his wife, Becca. We have Homelander and his weird fetish thing where he's having the shapeshifter pretend to be Madeline Stillwell, and and then we have Frenchie and Kimiko and him trying to connect with her. And if you want to add a fifth one on there, we could even say the whole thing with the Deep, with the interludes, with the where he's interviewing for a wife, basically. Although that, I don't think I would put that outside of the four, because as I said, those four kind of flow together and they follow the same format, whereas the Deep thing is kind of just like the interludes that's meant to like tie everything together and connect, where you just see these women talking about the various relationships they've been in. Of course, you have no context for this until the very end of the episode, where they reveal that they're interviewing to be the Deep's wife, which, if you know me, you know I was not a fan of that, because I don't like the Deep. I don't give a fuck about his storyline. I really, really just wish he'd go away, but that's just me. I will say, like, with the interludes with the interviews of the women, I did feel, even before I knew what it was, I did feel like this is kind of silly and a waste of time. But part of me thinks I could see how it's kind of tying the theme of the episode together and making everything clear. Now, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, how the four main story arcs follow the same arc, it's a similar arc, I would say, not the same arc, because particularly the one that stands out the most to me is the Frenchie and Kimiko one, because from the beginning, like, Kimiko is grieving the loss of her brother, and that's when Frenchie thinks it's a great idea to try to kiss her, which of course is a stupid thing to do and didn't go well. So it starts off bad from the get-go, whereas the other three sort of portray a nice, I would say, like, touching and loving relationship, and it's not really lustful. In each of the three cases, it's not really about sex. It's about connection. It's about having someone there that understands you and that you feel connected and loved to. And I'm even talking about the Homelander storyline of it, even that's in a really twisted way, but which of course is The Boys. You should expect nothing less than having a twisted version. But the Hugh, of course, is this version. The Hugh and actually the Billy Butcher, both of them are this version in this pure form, where these couples really do connect with each other. And in all three of those cases, they start out like really loving and they're connecting actually through most of the episode, but then at the end, for various reasons, it all falls apart. And I love that. I think this is one of the most brilliant, like, explorations of romance inside a greater TV show, series that's not about romance, that I've seen. I think I think this is a great way to develop the characters, and it put everything together. So I was actually super impressed with this episode. Now, let me start with the Hugh storyline, because I don't know, this and the Billy Butcher were my favorites. Like, I probably like the Hugh one the best, I would say, because I don't know, I've heard a lot of people complain about Hugh and Starlight's or Annie's relationship in season 1. I personally always liked their relationship. I thought it was a strength of season 1, so maybe I will have a different opinion on this storyline. Some people will, but for me, I love their interaction. I think their chemistry here was like really golden. It was like really well developed, and you could really. And the thing is, when they started out the episode with Annie and Hugh meeting under the bridge, and how they were just exchanging information, and Annie's getting really down on herself because it feels like they only made things worse with everything. They risked their lives, and all they did was make things worse, and so she's really depressed. And of course, it had the scene earlier in the episode where Homelander was like threatening her life, had her like pent up against the elevator, and it sort of personified all her fears coming true because she's terrified every day of working in the same building with Homelander. And I thought that was great. And of course, that tied into Homelander's character arc that he had this episode. So, like, everything about it was great. And so, during that scene, I was a bit disappointed that it looked like Hugh and Annie were just going to go the separate ways, because like I want to see more interactions with these characters, because we hadn't got much of that in season 2. We got like the cloak and dagger stuff, but we didn't get like that personal relationship, which I actually thought worked really well in season 1, and why these characters, like, we need to be reminded why these characters love each other, what they have in common. And I think the following scenes we got, like, did that perfectly. It did that to the T. So when Hugh suggested that Annie go on the road trip with him and Mother's Milk, I was like, yes, please. And when Mother's Milk was like refusing, like, no, it's not going to happen, I was like I was really into it. I was like really upset. I was like, shut up, Mother's Milk. Let her go. And then so they did. And I thought it was amazing. I thought this was great character interaction. Personally, and this is just me, I don't know how other people feel about it, but the scene where they were like turned on the radio and they turned to the Billy Joel's "We Didn't Start the Fire," which is a song I used to listen to a lot as a kid. But anyway, I love that scene. I was literally laughing out loud hysterically during this scene. I thought it was one of the funniest, one of the best like character moments that the show has ever done. I just love that scene so much when Hugh starts singing along, and then Annie takes it up, and she knows the lyrics as well, and they sing along, she's singing along, and then they start singing along together, and to the point where Hugh starts screaming and going, I can't take it anymore, and slamming on the thing, and then Mother's Milk turns off the radio. It's like, all right, that's enough of that. Like, that was hilarious. That was I love that scene to death. And then you got, as I said, even though it was about Hugh and Annie's relationship, you actually had the Mother's Milk involvement. As I said, you could learn more about his character, where him and Annie were connecting over their fathers. Like, that was a nice moment. That was a really great touching moment. Also, how Annie asked Hugh, was like, what's up with Mother's Milk's OCD? Because she's sort of... And I want to see Annie more involved with the boys. I want to see her become a full-fledged... Well, she couldn't become a full-fledged member, obviously. She would have to be more a covert member. But, yeah, I love this concept of her interacting more with Mother's Milk and other characters, and her being more involved in what the boys do. Because part of the issue that really bugged me, not in the story writing, just in the in-universe stance with the way Hugh was behaving in the first 3 episodes, was when Hugh purposely excluding Annie and refused to tell her about the CIA agent's head exploding, because his arrogance stance of wanting to not put her in danger, which is actually really ignorant and stupid stance to take, because her life is already in danger, and in fact, the less she knows, the more she's in danger, unlike the other way around. So I actually would like to see her more involved with the boys' exploits, and so I liked that she was getting to know some of the other characters like Mother's Milk more. I thought that really worked. And in the hotel scene where he was like, so there's 2 beds and there's 3 of us, so I want to bunk with Mother's Milk. And he's like, good choice. But then he ends up hanging out with Annie all night anyway. And so we know they got together, but I'm kind of disappointed that the next morning they didn't show, like, I guess we assumed that Hugh just went back to Mother's Milk's room before he woke up, so he was none the wiser. I thought it would have been more interesting if he actually slept in Annie's room overnight and Mother's Milk got up and saw that he was sleeping in her room and was like, oh, here we go. But I don't know, maybe that could have happened, but since it wasn't on screen, I'm kind of assuming that it didn't. Because if it did happen, why not show it? But anyway, he still has that reaction because he can tell by the way that Hugh and Annie are looking at each other and the way they're interacting in the car that they hooked up. Like, he could tell, and he shoots. And I love how this scene is played entirely in looks. This is the way, like, you can really use the visual medium so well, because you can tell that Mother's Milk picked up on the fact that the two of them hooked up, and he's not happy about it because he shoots Hugh like disapproving look. And I love that's great, and it shows how people can do giddy and stupid things when they're in love. But then we get to the end of the episode when they get back to the city, and Annie basically breaks up with Hugh, pretty much saying, like, look, when I'm with you, I feel safe, I feel relaxed, but we can't afford to feel this way right now. And it's just a distraction, and she feels like, basically, of course, she's afraid of being seen with him, and it puts her life in danger. And so they go our own separate ways, and of course, he was very crushed by this. And that's something that was really realistic, something I can relate to, and something that it just makes a lot of sense. I just think it made the storyline just a lot more impactful. And I understand Annie's perspective of this is not working. But as I said, I do want to see more of these characters together, and I want her to see more involved with the boys, and I'm still holding out hope. I'm not giving up on that. I'm sure they'll find some way to bring these two back together eventually, but that was a good way to end this story. So, it kind of glossed over the part of the story where they actually did do some plot advancement, which I think is saying something, because it means, like, the parts of this story that did advance the plot, I don't really care about. I was more interested in the character stuff. And I'm, of course, referring to the revelation that Stormfront is apparently ageless, or at least ages very, very slowly. Which actually, because I've been watching some videos about the comic character from the comic that this show is based on. And apparently that character, Stormfront's totally different. It's a man, he was a Nazi, whereas in the show, not only is Stormfront a woman, she's also Jewish. So it's something very, in fact, yeah, in the comics, like, he actively worked for, like, the Nazis and Hitler and whatnot. So I thought they were going to do something completely different, but they kept the part of his character that Stormfront is ageless, because then, of course, if he worked for the Nazis in the comics, that means he's over 70, 80 years old, and he still looks just as young as he did before. So they brought that aspect into the TV show character of Stormfront, which I was not expecting. I was surprised that they did that, and of course, they're bringing it back to her, even though she's not a Nazi outright, she is a racist who was going around killing black motorists and saying racist things to them. And so, yeah, so that sort of advances the plot a little bit. So, but really, as I said, I was like less concerned with that. It was interesting though. Alright, so let's get into the Billy Butcher and Becca stuff. So this is kind of, I talked about in my review of the first 3 episodes that I thought we were robbed by not getting their interaction. In fact, we didn't get any response to how Becca feels about Billy Butcher in the first 3 episodes, which I thought was a cop-out that bothered me, but we finally get it now in this episode, which I am very happy, and I thought it was done very well. That being said, I still think they should have explored it in the second episode, or the first episode of the second season. I think it is a cop-out to push it back all the way back to this episode, but at least they did get to it. So, and this was a really beautiful interaction as well. It shows the kind of relationship they have. It shows, in fact, because I was unclear on how Becca felt about Billy, and this episode made it very clear because it shows how she still loves him, she still cares about him, and she was all on board, like seeing him again, having sex with him again. She was all on board with running away with him, and then reality kicked in, where she realized that those were just flights of fancy, and that in reality, he wouldn't care for her son the way he wanted, because, and you could tell this, and I love the way they played this, because whenever she brought up her son when they were together, he didn't completely ignore it. He's like, oh yeah, it'll be great, fine. But it was obvious that he was kind of just placating her, that his heart wasn't in it. And so when she went down and thought about it, she's like, he's saying, oh, bring the boy, we'll go, yeah, we'll raise him, blah, blah, blah. But it was obvious like he was just playing lip service. And when she called him out on it, he was like, well, he's a soup. And there was a lot of sort of prejudice dripping in that sentence, but it was also kind of a sense of practicality coming from him, where he's like Vought is never going to let him go. They have billions of dollars invested in him. We could get by if it's just us, that we can get away, and they will, and they won't put in that much effort to find us. But if it's him, who they have billions of dollars invested in, they are going to put all their fucking resources into finding him, and we will never be free from them. Which is true from a practical standpoint. Of course, he would never be able to convince her mother to give up her son over this, which is why he didn't bring it up. But also, there is, even though that's a practical stance that makes practical sense, there is that prejudice underlining there, that you could imply that he's not happy that it's not his son, that it's Homelander's son who raped her, and it's a symbol of her being violated in this way, and that will always irk him. But I think, moreover, that may or may not be the case, but moreover, what definitely is the case is that he has a prejudice against superheroes, and the fact, and raising a boy who is one would not be okay with him. So that was really great how all that played out, because, as I said, it made their relationship very clear. It showed how she still cared about him, she still loved him, but when it came down to practicality, to reality, she realizes that he would not be good for her, because she wants to raise her son, and he would not fit into that life. And moreover, another thing that I loved is how, she asked what he'd been up to, and he's like, oh, I've been doing this and that. And he's like, bullshit. And then finally confessed that he was like on this really big quest for revenge, because he thought that Homelander had killed her. And that showed, kind of played into the man that she knew he was, because one of my favorite lines is when she said to him that after she was raped, that she didn't go to him about it, she went to Vought. And she said there was a reason for that. It was because she knew that he would be pissed off and want revenge and wouldn't let it go and would just get himself killed. And so she turned to Vought. And that shows that the kind of asshole, vindictive, violent man that Billy Butcher is didn't happen after the incident in which he thought his wife was dead or killed. He was always that way. And we saw that a bit in season 1 with some of the flashbacks. So he was always this kind of man. And so she always knew that side of him and always didn't like that part of him. And it absolutely repelled her in this stance. And that scene where she's like, they're going to be here in a minute, so you got to run. And she was crying. That was a very powerful scene. So all that played out really well as well. So let's get into the Homelander stuff. As I said, this really twisted. I know some people are a huge fan of Homelander. I don't know if I am. He's a sociopath. I guess I kind of like him in the same way I like Joffrey on Game of Thrones. Just this really fucked up sociopath. And they really, oh my god, they really took it to an extreme here. Where we get the scene where he goes home to Madeline Stilwell and it's like, oh, let me give you some. And again, it's not played up in a sexual way. It's more of he always saw her as a nurturing mother that he never had, but then kind of intermingled it in sort of lustful feelings. So is weird. And so when they had that scene, I was like, what the hell is going on? I, of course, assumed that like it was a dream and he would wake up. But turns out that it was. I was really hoping that they wouldn't say, "Oh, she's actually alive. She didn't actually die," because that would piss me off. But they didn't do that. It was the doppelganger who was in season 1 who can change his shape, pretending to be her, and that's of course really fucked up. It's really fucked up, and of course he's having issues because Stormfront is taking all the fame away from him. And basically, like, it was a pretty interesting, like, when Madeline Doppelganger at Stilwell was basically told him that he needed to push the 7 out. So he started to do that. He fired A-Train. He threatened Annie's life, and he outed Queen Maeve on television as being in a same-sex relationship, which was a huge deal. I hope they really explore the fallout of this a lot more and how this affects Maeve, because obviously she is not okay with this. Now, when they first explored the storyline in season 1 and how she was hiding the fact that she was gay, I thought, well, did she really need to do that? Because surely Vought would just twist that to be like, oh, here, we're inclusive and pro-LGBT. In fact, that's the context in which Homelander released it, saying, look, we're inclusive. We even have a lesbian member. But we learned this season that it's not Vought she was afraid of. It was Homelander himself. And I get the impression it doesn't matter like what the gender of Queen Maeve's love interest is just the fact that she has a love interest would make Homelander extremely jealous because he's really possessive, and that he might be, apparently he's killed people in the past because of this, and that's, she was afraid of Homelander. And so he found out, but he was saying, oh, that's great, you're fine, you go have your relationship. But here's the thing, and I talked about this in my previous review, when Homelander is seeming to be like sincere like that, it's usually fake and bullshit. So I don't trust him. I don't think Queen Maeve should trust him, that he would just show up and kill her, her girlfriend for no goddamn reason because he could, or kill her, just kill Queen Maeve. And so she's on edge now because she doesn't really know how this is going to deal. So that was a huge development for the show. So that was a big thing, which I hope they explore more. And then, of course, you get the confrontation between Stormfront and Homelander, which I thought was absolutely great. And she has that attitude where she just does not give a fuck. And she's like, oh, you feel like you need billions of people's love? That's pathetic. And then he gets the glowy eyes, and she's like, okay, calm down. Now, not to get too much into spoilers, but I saw some trailers that imply there will be a physical confrontation between these two characters, and I thought it was going to happen in this episode, but Stormfront calmed him down. But let me just say that I don't think Stormfront is as vulnerable to Homelander as everyone else is. Homelander so far has been portrayed as the most powerful character, and no one else can really stand a chance against him, so which is why even Annie and other people have to sort of play into him, try to placate him, because they know they can never overpower him in a physical fight. I am not entirely sure that is the case with Stormfront. I think Stormfront could actually take him on. And so I think her decision to calm him down was more strategic one. It's out of, if we don't have to fight, let's not fight. But I don't think she's at his mercy the way that all the other characters are. But that's just my opinion. We'll see. But for whatever reason, she called him down. And I love how they had all the memes that and this is so true, because this is what I love about the show. It takes modern politics and modern culture and modern technology and integrates it into a superhero setting. And That's absolutely true. If someone wanted to plan a propaganda campaign, which is what she's doing, that she's actually doing it better. Like, okay, so Homelander's kind of, when he did in season one, like promoted with like all these $1 billion like campaigns and all this, he's doing it the American way, the corporation way, whereas Stormfront is doing it the Russian way. Just implying, like, planning all this shit on the internet, playing a bunch of memes and having all these trolls, like, do the work for her. She's like, I paid, what did she say she paid them in? Like, gift certificates to IHOP or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. And it's more effective than these $1 million media campaigns. And that's, yeah, that's true to mine, to monoculture, what's going on with the Russian planning all this misinformation on the internet and using it in order to sow discord in our culture and our political, to make the country more split and more politically polarized. And I love that commentary. I thought it was great. And plus, I like the memes themselves. How they had that one meme with the guy with his girlfriend, and he's checking out another girl, and his girlfriend's looking disgusted at him, and they have names. And they did that. I think they had Stormfront as the hot girl, and the American public as the guy, and Homelander as the pissed off girlfriend. I'm like, God, that meme is like, so overused. But the meme that they should have had, the meme that I think is even more overused in that one, is the one with, like, I guess it's like from the Housewives or whatever, because I don't watch any of that reality shit, but it's about the woman yelling at, pointing and yelling at this cat who's sitting at the dinner table just looking like, what? Like, I am so goddamn sick of that meme. They should have had a version of that, too. But, but I think it's funny they had the one with the guy at the girl. But anyway, so that was cool. And then we get the ending scene where he goes back to Doppelganger, and Homelander's like, I don't need anyone. He's rejecting Stillwell. I'm like, I don't need anyone but me. And then so Doppelganger pretends, shapes into Homelander, which was dumb. I knew he was dead. I'm like, you're playing with your life here, man. Obviously, Homelander. And he's like, it's not gay because it's be yourself doing it. Like, that is just... He's dead. And he can't read the room. He can't tell how disgusted Homelander is by this. And because Homelander is disgusted by himself. So I've heard other reviewers say this, and I totally agree, that when Homelander said to Doppelganger, you're pathetic, he wasn't saying that to Doppelganger. He was saying that to himself. He was saying that to Homelander. He was looking at a version of himself and saying, you're pathetic, because he thinks that he is pathetic, because that's what Stormfront said to him. So he took that on. Like, he basically is agreed that is pathetic. But at least Homelander's moved beyond his really sick, twisted need to play fantasy with Stillwell, but he did that by killing Doppelganger, of course, which, as I said, this is the boys. We have to have a sick and twisted storyline in there somewhere. Alright, so Kimiko and Frenchie. This was interesting. As I said, I think this does tell me more about Frenchie's character, because he thinks that's when he wants comfort, he goes and makes out. And so that's, in fact, we see that in this episode. The character, the woman he was with in the beginning of season 1, when he's depressed, he goes to her and they have sex. So that's how he thinks people feel better. So, and again, so from his sick and twisted perspective, he thinks that that will make Kimiko feel better. Let's make out and have sex, because that's what makes him feel better. And of course, that is not the case. And so he goes back and to his other lover, and she sort of put things in perspective, like lays down the law and shows him how inconsiderate that was of him. And then we get the scene where Kimiko sees Stormfront and speaking in public and wants to go and assassinate her. And I knew, there's no way. We know from the last confrontation, there's no way she could take her on. Like, if she tries to attack Stormfront direct like that, she will die. And so it was really cool how Frenchie, a bit serendipitous, he just happens to show up in the nick of time to save her. But it was actually cool how he shows up and says, no, she'll kill you. We have to be smarter about this, and you can't just let your need for revenge just get the better of you. But of course, we do know this will be an ongoing thread. Kimiko's need to get revenge on Stormfront. Alright, so I guess we'll talk about the deep thing. I don't really want to. I don't care. Like, as I said, like the interludes, it was kind of nice because it tied the whole episode together and it really said like sort of straightforward. It was about relationships, but it was just silly that. And of course, it was like this really sexy woman, like implying all this stuff, and Deep's like, "Oh, that's her," and the other, his mentor or whatever is like, "No, we have to go with this other one because she has the homely thing. That do you want to just have lust, or do you want to get back into the seven?" And he's like, "All right, fine." As I said, I don't care. I just wish they would write. I think he's even worse this season that they're bringing up this whole church or whatever it's called, cult type thingy, which I talked about this in a lot of shows. I don't really like episodes that focus more on like these weird cult things. Like, I'm thinking of BoJack Horseman, and it's what's it called, improv thing. Like, I hated that. And basically any show like Stargate SG-1, any show that does this focus on these cult things, I just tune out. I'm not, or Golden Cotton, Deep Space Nine with his Paul Wraith cult. Like, I just don't care. For some reason, I'm just not interested in these type of storylines. And so when I had this weird, creepy church thingy, it's like, and plus, I never liked the Deep to begin with. So that just strikes it even more that I just don't give a, I don't care. Anyway, sorry. So, my rating for Nothing Like It in the World, out of 10, I'm going to give this a 9, excellent. I thought this was an excellent episode, even though it did very little to advance the plot. It did a lot to advance the character stories. The Homelander thing was it's the kind of twisted shit you expect from The Boys, so it's meeting that quota for the week. But it also does, I think the Hugh and the Billy Butcher storylines were really heartfelt, really touching, really realistic, really relatable. It's sort of a realistic portrayal of what it's like to be in a relationship and the complexities with it and the issues with it. And as I said, I thought it was really clever how basically they had all these storylines that were following the same thread at the same time and having those interviews to sort of tie them together. I thought it was a really well written, clever episode. So that's it for my review of Season 2, Episode 4 of The Boys. I shall be back next week and every week to review new episodes of The Boys, so be sure to check that out. Also, check out my channel as I cover many other shows like Lower Decks, BoJack Horseman, Star Trek, and The Expanse, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.